Welcome back to Mr. News Art Class. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces today. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about varying your line weight. There's a really excellent video by Mark Crilly, I'll leave links down in the description below, where he shows you 5 different ways to ink the same picture, and talks a lot about different ways to think about varying your line weight. When we say line weight, we're talking about how thick or thin your lines are. That video from Mark Crilly is kind of long, but if you have the time, I definitely recommend that you go watch it. I'm going to try to keep this video pretty short and talk about some of the ways that I personally think about line weight while I draw this filthy rich man for the Inktober 18th, 2017 prompt, Filthy. So here in this filthy rich drawing, you see that I have varied my line weight in each line, where like here's a line that starts out thick, gets thin, and even has a little gap, then gets thicker again as it comes up around this corner, and then gets thin along the edge here, thicker there. And like this line is thicker where it overlaps, and then thinner across the edge here. And for this picture, I was trying to kind of create a brushed effect. I actually wasn't using my brush tip, I was using the 08, which is kind of a large micron pen, and I was kind of using it sketchily, which you could see in the video previously. The reason I'm not using my brush tip pen for this is because my brush tip pen, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it's a little bit frayed at the end, it's a little bit split, and it doesn't work quite as well as I want it to. I need to get a new brush tip pen. But what I want to show you here is the difference between this effect and some of the other pictures that I have drawn for Inktober. So here, it gets this kind of almost brushed or even a little bit sketchy look, especially around fuzzy edges like the beard. Whereas in most of my other drawings, the lines are much cleaner. Here in this picture of the swan, I used very light lines, very small, thin lines around the whole swan, and even for all the water, because I wanted it to be very soft and delicate, which is why I used very soft and delicate lines. Whereas for fat, for this strip of bacon, I used some lines that are thinner and some lines that are thicker. I was still very delicate and precise with those lines, making sure that they are, even thickness most of the way across. I did make over here a little bit where there's, slightly thicker there than it is here, but for the most part, each line is the same thickness, the same weight all the way down the line, but different lines have different weights. To show mostly where there's lighter and darker areas of the bacon. Sometimes I have illustrations like this one where pretty much all the lines are exactly the same thickness, and that happens when I just use one size of pen for the whole thing. I think I did this one, I can't remember whether I used the 03 or the 05, might have been the 02, but I think it was the 03. 03 is kind of my go-to size for most things. And here you can see there are areas where I added little shadows underneath, but for the most part, everything in this picture has the same line weight. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is to show how different line weights can create different effects. Here I've got some thin lines and some thick lines. Again, usually when I use line variations, I like to use darker lines in areas where there would be shadow. But also, something that I should have done and would have done for this one, but forgot, usually when I finish drawing a character like this, I like to make the outline more thick than the rest, just to make it pop from the background. I don't know why I forgot to do that for this one. I might go back and do it later. And for this one, I know I just didn't have the time to go back and do it. I also didn't have the time to go back and add the white highlights in either of these drawings. So I might go back and do that for both of those. Whereas for this picture, I'm trying to emphasize how filthy rich and maybe a little bit crooked he is, going back to one of the earlier prompts. A lot of times when we think about super rich people, for some reason, we like to think that we're better than they are. We like to think that they are, for some reason, get their money in illicit ways. I don't know why people feel that way. Most people that have money actually earned it through legitimate means. But when we think about bigwigs, we usually think about them as being crooked and illegitimate in some way. And I'm kind of trying to get that feel with these bajankety lines that aren't quite all there, and I'm going to try to shade this with some hatching to try to emphasize that same feeling. I also chose to make the line work with my white gel pen very similar to the underlying black line work, in that it has thicker and thinner areas and looks more brushed on. Doing that with the white gel pen also helps to re-emphasize that look and feel of the underlying black lines. But as I go back and I compare this picture to previous pictures, I start to see some interesting differences. Like, let's just compare and contrast my fierce dragon to my filthy rich man with money poking out of his ears. Noticing here the line work being very brushed feel, but in this picture the line work being much more consistent throughout. This picture, because of the line work having that more brushed feel, having that looser feel, where there's thicker lines that taper off and then disappear and have some gaps in the lines, it makes this one feel much different. This one feels much more methodical, much more purposeful, much more intense and intentional. Whereas here, with the looser lines, it makes it feel much more wishy-washy, which is pretty much exactly the feel I was going for. However, it should be important to note that that also has to do with the imagery, and I think that if I had used this same brushed style in this dragon illustration, it wouldn't have had the same wishy-washy feel. It just would have looked more textural and gestural. And I think that's what I'm really trying to get at. This looks more gestural, more quick and less methodical, whereas this picture looks more very purposeful and methodical. There's nothing wrong with doing it either way, but it's important to kind of understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it fits with the imagery that you're trying to draw. Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts on line weight and how it impacts your drawing. If you have your own preferences for one style or another, or maybe a style that's completely different and not mentioned here at all, maybe you like to have everything the same line weight, maybe you like to do stippling where it's just dots and no lines, whatever. If you've got a different style or a different opinion about one of these styles, leave it down in the comments below. Let me know what you're thinking. I'd love to have a conversation about it with you. If you like this picture or this video, hit the thumbs up button down below and share it with your friends. And if I've earned it, smash that subscribe button and join the notification squad so you never miss my future videos. As always, thanks again for watching and have a great day.